But sperm meets egg. This is mammalian reproduction. And that egg starts to duplicate. It starts to make more of itself. It makes more cells. And eventually some of those cells become skin. Some of those cells become brain. Some of those cells become muscle. Some of those cells become fingers. All the stuff that makes up the brain and body plan. In addition, there are hormones that come both from the mother and from the developing baby, the developing fetus, that impact whether or not the brain will be what they call organized masculine or organized feminine. And as I say this, I want you to try and discard with the cultural connotations or your psychological connotations of what masculinization and feminization are, because we're only centering on the biology. So typically, people have either two X chromosomes, and the traditional language around that is that person is female, right? Or an X chromosome and a Y chromosome, and that person will become male. Now, it's not always the case. There are cases where it's XXY, where there are two X chromosomes plus a Y chromosome. There are also cases where it's XYY, where there are two Y chromosomes. And these have important biological and psychological impacts. So the first thing we need to establish is that there is something called chromosomal sex. Whether or not there are two X chromosomes or an X and Y chromosome is what we call chromosomal sex. But the next stage of separating out the sexes is what we call gonadal sex. Typically, not always, but typically, if somebody has testes for their gonads, we think of them as male. And if somebody has ovaries, we think of them as female. Although that's not always the case either. But let's just explore the transition from chromosomal sex to gonadal sex, because it's a fascinating one that we all went through in some form or another. So this XY that we typically think of as promoting masculinization of the fetus